There we go. I fucked up.
Maybe not.
Nope, we're back now.
We are back.
So Top G went on Piers Morgan 3 weeks ago for the second time. We decided we were going to react to this, so neither one of us have seen this.
No,
we decided this last week, but we needed to watch Top G come back and fuck up Piers Morgan again, because last time it was a bad outlook for Piers. But let's see how well he does this time. We are on the road to 1K. You motherfuckers.
They can't get us there.
You guys can't do this. You can't.
I don't think they can.
But we'll see.
They don't have it in them.
So let's show this big ugly retard that you guys can't do things.
Tate, whose videos have been viewed billions of times online, but he's been banned from pretty much every mainstream social media platform, including Twitter. Andrew Tate, welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Your take on this, I think, is quite interesting, because you've been a victim of being, if victim's the right word, but you've been removed from social media platforms for your opinions. Elon Musk has dedicated himself, he says, to restoring free speech. Do you think that's going to include you, for example?
I don't think it matters if it includes me or not. I think what's important is that free speech is the #1 weapon against absolute tyranny. And although you cannot have complete free speech, because then conversations completely break down into asinine insult fests, I do like the idea of the changing of the guard when it comes to control over information.
Is it possible, Andrew Tate, to actually police something like Twitter, to be a platform for genuine free speech? Or is it so toxic and tribal now that whatever happens, before we had all the people on the right screaming away that they were being no platformed and so on. Now you've got all the people on the left screaming that they're being diminished in some way. It's very tribal, very toxic. Can Musk cut through that? And if so, how?
Yeah, it's going to be extremely difficult. There's always going to be one group of people who are extremely unhappy, but I think that anybody who's perspicacious enough to understand the truth of what's been going on in the world recently will know that the left and their narratives have certainly been protected for a very long time. And the universe has swings and balances, and God often restores balance to the universe, and perhaps it might swing the other way for a while. I truthfully am a person who believes that all points of view are extremely important, because as soon as you block points of view, you have absolute tyranny.
So obviously you live in one of the most non-protected speech locations in the fucking world.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can't say online in this country. I mean, the laws that they've written have not been used for the most part to actually prosecute people, but like they're just laying the groundwork to be able to do pretty much whatever they want and justify silencing people for the silliest of shit. It's pretty fucked.
It's interesting to see what the hell's going on with everything, and with what Musk actually has done. He's allowing a shit ton. He genuinely just is. And it's interesting to see what the hell was going on. Do you think that Andrew Tate being unbanned now is worthy? Do you think that's logical?
What? Abso-fucking-lutely, because the man's obviously massively popular on the internet, and to actually give him a legitimate platform like Twitter again is gonna drum up so much support, both for Twitter, Elon himself, and Andrew Tate personally. And like he said, like, it's important to not silence everyone on the political spectrum, aside from the fucking crazy whack jobs on the far outreaches of both left and right. But
like, to me, it
nothing he has ever said on the internet like should lead to him being deplatformed off any platform.
And what Piers said, he said, everybody that was on the right was complaining, saying they were being deplatformed. They were. They absolutely were. It started with the fringes and then progressively pushed into the right.
And that's not even just an opinion. That's truth, because most of fucking Twitter's fact-checking staff, or whatever the shit you want to call them, were all far left.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fucking insane, illogical people.
Now they're saying
you can see that from the
left
list of people who used to work there.
Now you're seeing that with the left saying the same thing.
And I think that's just him trying to
It's coming back to center. It's allowing both parties to be platformed, and it's making it so that way everything that the left says isn't propagated and pushed to everybody. It's now whatever's being interacted with more blindly, which is
I don't hear of any left-leaning like political commentators or anything getting removed from Twitter all they did was simply remove those extremely biased people from Twitter as a company. Like, it just made sense.
Like, we're not hearing about kill all men anymore, which is interesting. For a while, that was everything that was on Twitter every single day. Kill all
Yeah, it's
men.
pretty fucked. Pretty fucked. I don't use Twitter that much because, like, I've barely touched it in the last, like, 4 or 5 years because it's just evolved
It was
into
a
such
cesspool.
fucking shit, man. Yeah.
Ugh, this shit's ridiculous. Oh, come on.
And in a
There
way,
it goes.
it's sort of self-defeating, isn't it? Because you carried on getting huge attention. It was interesting to me that when you came on the show, for example, we've had, I think, nearly 6 million people have viewed the whole interview that we did, which is a huge number of people, certainly far higher than watched it on conventional television. So you have a whole world out there online which operates away from social media platforms.
Yeah, I've been very, very successful in spite of them, but not many people can do that. I'm in a pretty unique position. But I think that everybody needs a voice to a degree, and social media platforms are now the most important platforms on the planet. They control information, and they influence real-world decisions, and they influence people's perception of reality. The last few years of COVID have been a perfect example of what happens when you censor one side of the argument, and you only allow one point of view to be purported by the matrix in and of itself, and that's how you end up in tyrannical situations. I think you were just discussing that, Piers.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly valid point. You know, people have quite rightly, held me to task over some of the positions I took during the COVID pandemic, notably when the scientists said as a definitive fact that you couldn't transmit the virus if you had the vaccine. It turned out that wasn't true. And I based my observations on that supposed fact and said, right, well, in that case, if you refuse to be vaccinated, you shouldn't get the same rights as people who've been vaccinated. If it's true that if you're unjabbed, you can pass it on. It turned out, actually, there's not much difference whether you've been vaccinated or not. And at that point, I changed my mind. But I felt that there were a lot of people who were being deplatformed from Twitter at the time for questioning the validity of scientific statements, and they would then be a complete U-turn. So I do think it was a very interesting period, actually, for testing what free speech means.
It was actually worse than that. You're right, Piers, but it was actually worse than interesting, because what happens is when you censor an entire side of the argument and only allow one side of the argument to have a voice, you are changing reality in real time. You are shaping the world. The only reason that scam continued as long as it did, and the only reason people didn't get to see their own parents get buried, and the only reason people sat and missed cancer appointments because they were scared of the common cold, was because they were censoring anybody who said anything contrary to the purported version of events that the mainstream media decided they want the entire world to swallow. It's beyond simply interesting, and it's beyond simply funny or coincidental.
Yeah, I mean, I will challenge you on one thing. It's not.
It's crazy.
It's big to see someone like him own up to the fact that, yeah, I believe the scientists. Later came out that the shit that they were saying was bullshit, and is just owning up to that. That's honestly, I got more respect for Piers out of this, really.
Like, honestly,
Like, fuck.
even people like Joe Rogan were on the bounds of being silenced because he gave
Oh my
his
god,
opinion.
yeah, dude.
Now,
Like 2 years ago, anything you saw about him online was just people talking about how he's a conspiracy theory nut job, believes all this retarded shit, and
and
fucking.
it's just like, as we separate ideals or ideology from everything and say, okay, this ideology is bad and this is good, we're just making it so that way having those in-depth discussions of this is a possibility makes everything more blind. We allowed people to say, hey, any immunization can cause autism without really much backing to it. And we took it as a truthful and instinctful fucking thing of trying to protect your young, which makes sense. Trying to take care of the people that are around you in the best way you possibly can makes sense. Whether or not what they're trying to do in doing that makes sense. But when people came out against COVID vaccines, it was, no, you're a piece of shit. You're trying to kill grandma. All of a sudden, everything's bad. You're bad. You're bad. You're bad. You're bad. When they just didn't see the validity in it. There was no proof and no backing to it yet. We learned in high school that the scientific method was test something, give it a theory, use that theory to try and prove it. And if it doesn't prove it, you continually question it. So it's not a scientific fact until it stands up to questioning. And
Right. And it's one thing to look at it from your perspective, because obviously you guys had widespread vaccine mandates, especially where you are in fucking New York. But like here, it was different. It was not questioned, period. Like every province immediately adopted it all. And it was so fucking wild, man. It's so fucking wild. Still, like there's a lot of places, industries that are backpedaling on it and don't care now. But there's still a shocking amount of people who believe it has way more effect than it actually ever
like
did.
even now, the governor of New York is like, you know what? We're gonna make it so that way there's mandates for all kids to get it before going into school. When they've shown the only thing that happens when kids get the vaccine is they get the worst version of it.
Yep. And they're usually immunizing you against a strain that was prevalent 6 months to a year ago.
It
Such a rapidly evolving virus that like immunizations do little to fuck all, man. Like it took them so long to realize it too.
like, and nobody wants to understand that or get that point. Is like the availability for those things changes and affects those things going forward. You can't just sit here and demand that everything's mandated when things change, opinions change. And yes, in those times when we're dealing with something so bad like COVID, that we need to be able to handle situations, you can't silence anybody because we're handling something that nobody's seen before. Those things change day to day, let alone hour to hour. People die. You have to have an open mind and see how different people are doing things and how those things affect the situations. At the beginning, we were saying ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. As you put people on ventilators, I think their death rate was like 85 or 90%.
Oh yeah, it goes up exponentially once you take that fucking ability away for them to rely on their own respiratory system. Like your body's gonna be on a downturn. I mean, the people who were put on ventilators, remind you, people who were in really fucking rough shape, regardless. Yeah. Obviously, they didn't put everyone on them for no reason.
There's a different version of events, and I'm sure that probably happens in different circumstances. But like, so many people want to just say, "Oh, this was shit," or "That was shit," or "That's not how you handle things," and it's like, there's so many different levels to things, so many, and nobody genuinely will understand that unless you actually give it a chance to understand the different side of the opinion too. You can't just say, "Oh, that's bad," or "This is the wrong way to go about things," because that opinion might be valid next week.
It's wild to see, especially where you guys just passed through your midterms and everything. It's being politicized again.
Yep.
So much, whether you're talking vaccine mandates, mask mandates, anything like that, to the point where you guys now require proof of vaccination at the border, and us, who were at one point the most tyrannical lockdown country on the planet, have completely backpedaled. Our fucking federal health services pretty well all recognize that, yeah, these vaccines aren't worth a shit, and they don't require them. They don't require proof of vaccination, don't require testing at the border to enter Canada, period, at this point. And it's flipped 180 so quickly between my country and yours. It's fucked.
Yeah, it doesn't make any damn sense. And I'm sure that changes depending on which specific state you're going across in. And I'm sure that each individual one has different mandates. I remember to travel from, I think it was Vermont and Massachusetts, you had to have 12 days in that state. So if I went there from New York, I had to stay there for 12 days. I was not allowed to go out anywhere and do anything at that point. Mm-hmm. And so essentially you were accounting for a 14-day vacation, and 12 of it you had to be inside. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't receive any food. You had to have everything with you when you got there.
Yeah, they were doing the same thing here for pretty well a year and a half, except for short periods where there was really low case numbers in Atlantic Canada specifically, like traveling between any province. They were fucking insane about, like, I lived in a really, really small town when this shit broke out in like early 2020. And I knew people who would just like lose their shit seeing a vehicle drive through town with a different license plate from a different province. Like, that could be a rental car. That car could have been here 3 fucking years, man. Like, yeah, exactly. You have no idea. People are batshit.
This shit's fucking nuts.
Oh, man.
The common cold, right? COVID-19 has killed 6.6 million people. It is one of the most deadly viruses, certainly of our lifetime. So it wasn't the common cold, but I do think it is completely justified for people to say we should be more cautious, I think, about accepting during fast-moving pandemics the word of scientists as being sacrosanct, because on a number of things, from the use of masks to the efficacy of vaccines in preventing transmission, they did massive U-turns.
I've read enough history books to know that the people who do the censoring are never the good guys. And they've been censoring a lot of arguments for a very long time in the name of good. They are weaponizing virtue, and it's always in the name of tyranny. Anybody who is out here trying to silence an entire side of an argument on any subject, whether it's COVID-19, immigration, anything else, they are the evil people who are out for absolute mind control of the populace. And they should be feared.
I certainly agree. I certainly agree that I think the healthiest thing for any democracy is for all views to be aired and debated. We seem to have lost the ability to debate. You know, when I interviewed you, yeah, we had a few fractious moments, but actually, I thought it was a pretty spirited debate between people who perhaps had, you know, preconceived views of each other. And I've got no problem interviewing you now about these because I think you have an interesting take on this stuff.
And that's the key to life. When you reach that level of adolescence in your mindset where you can't handle any point of view that is contrary to your own, then you're truly a broken person. And that's what the internet is purporting. It's very interesting you said about Twitter being tribal. There's a large contingent of people on Twitter who simply cannot handle reading an opinion which differs from their own. And that is a degree of immaturity that we do not need adults to be functioning with in the modern world.
No, I agree. If you were Elon Musk...
That's the crazy thing, and I don't know about you specifically, but I lost so much family because I supported Trump in the 2016 election. So many people that were like sisters or our cousins, like close as fuck. Like every single day I saw them. And then because I supported Trump, I was a bad guy.
It's a little different here when you're talking about politics specifically, because we're not a two-party system, but we're closer to a two-party system than most people realize because our elections almost always flip back and forth between conservatives and liberals here. But yeah, it's wild to hear so many stories, the same shit like you just mentioned, just people being ostracized from their friends and family for their political views, period. Not like that actually changes the way you're gonna live your life at all. It's just your own opinions on things that are happening in the world.
And it's weird.
I mean, same thing with me. My own views on what has just happened over the last 2 years has certainly led to me being ostracized by a few people in my life. But
it's weird.
If they're willing to make such a big deal out of shit that's happening in society like that, then I'd rather not happen in my life.
It's weird because it's like the one specific thing that you think about that I went into the 2016 election with that I was like, this is the main thing that I have a problem with was free speech. I was like, I want free speech. I want the availability to be funny and the availability to tell jokes and be interactive in whatever way I see fit. Don't fucking censor what the hell I'm going to say. And that was my main point. Now that's still the reason why I'm pro fucking Republican at this point. I want the availability to make and choose the decisions that I choose for myself, not for you to do it for me. And yet that's still the reason why I'm a bad guy. It just blows my mind. It blows my mind.
Fucked.
Because like so many fucking people, man. So many fucking people.
This idea of charging $8 now a month, whatever it is, to access the blue tick premium Twitter account, would you do that? Would you pay the extra?
I think that social media companies for a very long time have lived in an absolute fantasy where they've printed money from thin air by charging people for pixels, and they grew into these large conglomerates with too many staff sitting around doing nothing, having coffee breaks. And Elon Musk is a businessman. He's walked into the office and he's firing a bunch of people who are messing around doing nothing, and he wants his business to make money as it absolutely should. And how he decides that happens is his prerogative. I don't see why we should sit and accept that a website needs 200,000 people sitting around discussing in long meetings, sitting on beanbags about policy of human rights of some garbage, when he's come along and said, no, I'm a businessman. We're going to charge for our service. We're going to reduce the number of staff. And we're going to be a functional, coherent company, as they should be. And it's his prerogative to do it as he's bought the company. I think he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, because I remember the appalling censorship of the New York Post exclusive about Hunter Biden, the son of the president, about his laptop. This is 3 weeks before the election that Joe Biden won. He was heading, to a possible victory, but it was tight. And that story, they reckon, could have tipped it.
That is a lie. He was not heading to victory. He was 5 to 6 points down, depending on where.
Yeah, he was behind, way more behind in the polls initially than a lot of people realized.
And if that laptop came out, which it is coming out now, and they are now investigating it because of the flip in the House, it makes me wonder what's going to happen next. They've tied Joe Biden directly to millions of dollars that came from China, We also have Burisma now that we are in Ukraine and everything else. What is going to happen? And everybody's like, well, you're a conservative. You think no? I think that everybody should be investigated. If there is a question, answer
especially
the question.
when when your own president has defended his own son, who's a fucking massive drug abuser, used prostitutes, all sorts of shit, and there's clear evidence of this on a hard drive that just happened to fall in someone's hands accidentally. And because of this, we found out so much more about his dealings in Ukraine. A war has since started in that country. Your fucking country's funding them with billions of dollars, and you know that family that runs your country is super tight with fucking oil and gas companies there. In the last 10 years, massive oil and gas reserves have been discovered in eastern Ukraine, like where a lot of the fighting is happening, and it's a massive driver for Russia to try to win that conflict as well. Like, it's just such a fucking deeply rooted issue, man, and I don't think we'll ever see the rest of it. This will be one of those issues where we'll see the truth about it like 20, 30 years from now, when they're fucking both dead, most likely.
No, exactly. And I don't think actually anything's going to happen because nobody wants to be anything other than fucking write down party lines. Nobody wants to be the person that sticks their neck out and says, hey, this is wrong. When
certainly won't happen while Dems are still in power in your country.
That's exactly what should happen. Just like if Trump did something on January 6th, he should be convicted of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Just like if Pence did something wrong, he should be convicted of it. Like, if there's levels of these things to where people did something wrong, they should be convicted. They should be tried. We should have a court system where this shit happens. We need to clean up politics. And that's the most infuriating thing to me. Oh, well, he was leading anyway to a possible win. He wasn't. The fact that this didn't go out flipped the presidency because they said it was a lie. And then Trump ran on it after this point, and that flipped the entire election. An election that was possibly also stolen by voter fraud and other problems that were going on as well.
There's a lot leading to that. Even just talking about misinformation on social media, man. There's a lot of signs pointing towards Russian interference with the entire thing, and I mean they've tried to disprove it many, many times. But if you look at the amount of fake accounts that are out there on social media, whether you're talking Facebook, Twitter, they're the two biggest ones. There was shitloads out there made by fake Russian accounts that are just trying to lean people towards the Democrat victory.
Yeah, no, it's sad. It's scary, man. It really is.
Either way, but it was completely suppressed and censored. Starting with Twitter, then Facebook, then others. Twitter literally locked out the New York Post account for 2 weeks for breaking a completely true story. And I thought that was shameful.
It's worse than shameful. It's worse than shameful. When you control information, you control the real world. They affect the real world in real time. They are genuinely affecting the reality people live in. They are not just a company. They're not just a social media platform. It affects absolutely every single person on the planet when it changes who is elected. I don't want to comment specifically on Hunter Biden or the laptop. I would never kill myself, but I don't think it's fair that they would hide certain key information that close to an election. And the fact that they've done that was done specifically to affect the world that we all live in. And we all have to suffer the consequences of those things. So to sit and say that these companies can just do whatever they want and they're private, etc. No, free speech is beyond important for democracy. It's important for the reality that we exist under.
Andrew Tate, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
I wish that they made it like a color code system. When you post something that's questionable, flag it as yellow, flag it as questionable. And when it has proof or validity given to it, make it then green, accepted. This is seen as the truth. And when it's not, then give it red. And allow those things to change and vary depending on the times and stuff like that. Give people the freedom to say the things that they want to say. Just like I'm going to say, I don't think that you're going to make us hit 1,000 fucking subscribers by December 31st. You're not going to do it. You can't do it. I don't believe in you. I don't believe in you. I
would flag that as yellow. It's like, there's a chance. We're not sure if this is completely true or not, but there's some validity to this statement.
And if you didn't fucking understand it, make sure to refresh it and take a little bit of caffeine, maybe a little bit of Adderall before you decide to listen to it again. Maybe put some thought into it. We'll see you fucking next time. And as always, we don't really have